A coworker of mine once asked me, when it comes to mothers or parents, which is worse, an absent parent or mother, or a toxic or abusive one? I said that was a good question, and I thought about it for a while. The answer I eventually came up with was that to have an absent parent or a mother is like missing a limb. You never really know why you're not as fast or as strong or as tall as everyone else until you realize something's not there that needed to be. And having a toxic or an abusive parent is like being perpetually ill, never being fully well or strong or happy or at ease. Both are terrible things to deal with, and no one should be exposed to them, but if I had to choose one or the other, most days I'd rather not be sick. This was the reality for Kaya. Kaya was an heiress of Syrup Village after her father passed away, and she was taken care of by Kuro, who was in disguise a notorious pirate who plotted to take her life and assume her wealth as soon as he got close to her. So, functionally, Kaya had an absent parent and a toxic parent or caregiver. Now, Kaya's story is not a terribly important one in the One Piece saga. However, what this kind of story does is point to a very important reality in the lives of everyone who's lived with abuse or who's fallen on hard times and lost their will. At some point after her father's passing, Kaya fell into a type of depression in the One Piece manga. It's described that Kaya was very sickly and she couldn't get well. However, after the removal of Kuro and his ultimate revelation, Kaya began to believe more in herself and cured herself from her sickness, which was only in her mind.
You see, my sickness this last year was caused by the mental shock of losing both my parents, and Usopp's friendship helped me start getting better.
It's a very common literary trope, or perhaps it was, that a person deep in sadness or depression, a despair that they can't pull themselves out of, will cause them to get sick, and in many stories they eventually lose their lives. However, in modern times, these story arcs, these plot points have been redacted and removed. Revised because they may seem antiquated or inherently misogynistic. The damsel falling ill, the widow succumbing to her sadness, particularly of period dramas, is a fairly common trope. Often, this idea that women or anyone could fall ill due to their emotions is viewed as anachronistic. How could it be that a woman is so fragile that her emotions could take her life? That isn't exactly a modern ideal, and suggests a general biological frailty of women that isn't true. A good example of this feeling towards this trope is in the One Piece live action Netflix series, where Kai's illness has been changed from a symptom of her emotional state to poison that has been given to her by Kuro in an attempt for him to seize control of her fortune. And although this is a logical choice because Kuro very well likely would have used poison to gain control of Kaya's fortune had she willed it over to him, and in a somewhat Mandela effect type of way, one might even remember the manga originally having her illness be related to poison. With this choice, and the general attitude modern showrunners seem to have towards this trope, this change undermines the real ramifications of poor mental health. Depression and sadness, despair may not be able to take your life in and of itself, but it is the beginning of and root of many of the things that ail the modern person. Hardship can cause a once happy, lively, fit person to stay home all day and neglect the sunlight, refuse to go to the gym, and otherwise maintain a healthy social life, to the effect of lying in bed all day and eating their emotions away. A sedentary lifestyle brought on by anything, let alone depression, can cause aching bones and bed sores. Your muscles will atrophy, and the stress of losing the things that once gave you joy can have the effect of suppressing your immune system, making you more vulnerable to the viruses and bacteria in your environment. These are the real effects of despair that countless people go through on a daily basis. The mental health space and therapy is driven by the reality that having a strong mental health can change your life for the better. And conversely, having weak mental health can turn it for the worst. So, in this one choice of having Kaya's frailty, her sickness being related to something that came from outside of her, rather than something that she was inadvertently allowing into her life, somewhat changed her arc from one of self-actualization.
Leave here right now! Never come back!
To one of a damsel who was rescued. And although the intention of this essay isn't to compare the live-action One Piece show to the manga or even the anime, the original story, Kaya's arc, is about someone who changed their mind and heart. It's a story about someone who recognizes that everything around them isn't good and that there are dark forces influencing her mind and actions. And when Kaya becomes aware of this, she makes the decision on her own to get stronger, to get better, to rediscover her dreams, to revisit her hopes, to walk through the barriers that she had placed up or that others had helped her build around her heart and mind. Kaya's original story is about her reclaiming her agency in her life, something that she had to do on her own, something that she had to discover on her own, by being aware, by listening to people, by trusting in the right people, by thinking for herself and deciding to move forward and move up in her life. That is the true nature of Kaya's story, and it's good to see that someone so lost in depression that it could cause something like illness and frailty, which real-life depression has the potential of doing, still has the power to turn their life around. What Kaya wants for her life, what she starts to become, the doctor she wants to be, the leader of her own household that she wants to be, is something that she started becoming after removing those negative forces with some help and reclaiming her vision of who she was and who she wanted to be. After losing her parents and enduring a toxic caretaker, she changed her story from sickness to strength. And that is the kind of story to be well enjoyed. So even if it is a trope, and even if it is a very old trope, it is still, quite often, a story worth telling.
That mask is cool. Let's see if we can make our own out of clay. Hey, Kaya, where are you going?
I should get back to my medical studies, that's all. I have to become a good doctor as soon as I can.